Hello, the Twits, Part 3. Mrs Twit gets a stretching. Mr Twit led Mrs Twit outdoors where he had everything ready for the great stretching. He had 100 balloons and lots of string. He had a gas cylinder for filling the balloons. He'd fixed an iron ring into the ground. "Stand here," he said, pointing to the iron ring. Then he tied Mrs Twit's ankles to the iron ring. When that was done, he began filling the balloons with gas. Each balloon was on a long string, and when it was filled with gas, it pulled on the string, trying to go up and up. Mr Twit tied the ends of the strings to the top half of Mrs Twit's body, some round her neck, some under her arms and her wrists, and even on her hair. Soon there were 50 coloured balloons floating in the air above Mrs Twit's head. "Do you feel them stretching you?" asked Mr Twit. I can, cried Mrs Twit. "They're stretching me like mad." He put on another 10 balloons. The upward pull became very strong. Mrs Twit was quite helpless now. With her feet tied to the ground and her arms pulled upwards by the balloons, she was unable to move. She was a prisoner. And Mr Twit had intended to go away and leave her like that for a couple of days and nights, just to teach her a lesson. In fact, he was just about to leave when Mrs Twit opened her big mouth and said something silly. "Are you sure my feet are tied properly to the ground?" she gasped. "If those strings around my ankles break, it'll be goodbye for me." And that's what gave Mr Twit his second nasty idea. "There's enough pull here to take me to the moon," Mrs Twit cried out. "To take you to the moon?" exclaimed Mr Twit. "What a ghastly thought! We wouldn't want anything like that to happen. Oh dear me, no." "We most certainly wouldn't," cried Mrs Twit. "Put some more string round my ankles quickly. I want to feel absolutely safe." "Very well, my angel," said Mr Twit, and with a ghoulish grin on his lips he knelt down at her feet. He took a knife from his pocket and with one quick slash he cut through the strings, holding Mrs Twit's ankles to the iron ring. She went up, boom, like a rocket. "Help!" she screamed. "Save me!" But there was no saving her now. In a few seconds she was high up in the blue sky and climbing fast. Mr Twit stood below looking up. "What a pretty sight," he said to himself, "and how lovely all those balloons look in the sky. And what a marvellous bit of luck for me. At last the old hag is lost and gone forever." Well, Mrs Twit may have been ugly, and she may have been beastly, but she was not stupid. High up there in the sky she had a bright idea. "If I can get rid of some of these balloons," she said to herself, "I'll stop going up, and I'll start coming down." She began biting through the strings that held the balloons to her wrists and arms and neck and hair. Each time she bit through a string and let the balloon float away, the upward pull got less and less and less. When she'd bitten through about 20 strings, she stopped going up altogether. She stayed still in the air. She bit through one more string. Very slowly, she began to float downwards. It was a calm day, no wind at all, and because of this, Mrs Twit had gone absolutely straight up. And now she began to come absolutely straight down. As she floated gently down, Mrs Twit's petticoats billowed out like a parachute, showing her long knickers. It was a grand sight on a glorious day, and thousands of birds came flying in from miles around to stare at this extraordinary old woman in the sky. Mr Twit, who thought he had seen his ugly wife for the last time, was sitting in the garden celebrating with a mug of beer. Silently, Mrs Twit came floating down. When she was about the height of a house above Mr Twit, she suddenly called out at the top of her voice, "Here I come, you grisly old grunion! You rotten old turnip! You filthy old flumpet!" Mr Twit jumped as though he had been stung by a giant wasp. He dropped his beer. He looked up. He gasped. He gurgled. He gaped. A few choking sounds came out of his mouth. "Ugh!" he said. "Ah! Oh! I'll get you for this!" shouted Mrs Twit. She was floating right down on top of him. She was purple with rage and slashing the air with her long walking stick. which she had somehow managed to hang on to all the time. "I'll swish you to a swazzle," she shouted. "I'll swash you to a swizzle. I'll nash you to a nozzle. I'll nosh you to a nuzzle." And before Mr Twit had any time to run away, this bundle of balloons and petticoats and fiery fury landed right on top of him, lashing out with the stick and cracking him all over the body. But that's enough of that. We can't go on forever watching these two disgusting people doing disgusting things to each other. We've got to get on ahead with the story. I'm going to show you a picture of Mr and Mrs Twit's house and garden. Some house. No windows on it at all. Looks like a prison. "Who wants windows?" Mr Twit had said when they were building it. "Who wants every Tom, Dick and Harry peeping in to see what you're doing?" It didn't occur to Mr Twit that windows were meant mainly for looking out of, not looking into. What did you think of the ghastly garden? Ugh. Mrs Twit was the gardener. She was very good at growing thistles and stinging nettles. "I always grow plenty of spiky things and plenty of stingy things," she used to say. "They keep out nasty, nosy little children." Near the house was Mr Twit's workshed. To one side of that there's the big dead tree. Never had any leaves on it because it was dead. And not far from the tree there was the monkey cage with 4 monkeys in it, and they belonged to Mr Twit. You'll hear about them later.